welcome to the Bible for Worship at St. Paul Lutheran Church on this Joy Sunday, when our gospel reading is written in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 35 through 38. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into the harvest." The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. These 4 verses at the end of chapter 9 of Matthew's Gospel are a summary statement of what Jesus has been doing and making the transition to what will be coming next. Matthew has used these a couple of times already at the end of chapter 4, just before the Sermon on the Mount, and again at the end of chapter 7, at the end of the Sermon on the Mount. In this case, coming at the end of chapters 8 and 9, the transition is from a whole series of healings that Jesus has done, along with some debates and other things, but mostly healings in these 2 chapters. And now Matthew moves on to show Jesus setting up the mission, the sending of the disciples with the good news of the kingdom that Jesus has come to spread. The summary is very classic of 3 things that Jesus does a lot: teaching, proclaiming the gospel, the good news, and healing. And in these last 2 chapters, that's mostly been healing. After summarizing that Jesus was doing this in all the cities and villages, Matthew says that experience, moving out among the people, being with them, healing their infirmities, raised in Jesus tremendous compassion, because the people, Matthew says, were like sheep without a shepherd. In Matthew's community, thoroughly familiar with biblical Israel's scripture, with what we have as the Old Testament, they would have recognized that phrase, because Israel is the sheep of God's pasture, and God is the shepherd, the ideal shepherd of Israel, the one who protects them, who seeks them out when they're lost, who guides them back when they stray. And by derivation, those who lead Israel on God's behalf are also recognized as shepherds, whether they're good shepherds or not such good shepherds. And the prophets know well that some of them were not good. But Moses was originally portrayed as a shepherd, keeping the flocks of his father-in-law Jethro. And we know that David, in one of the traditions, was a shepherd boy, keeping the family's flocks. And since David is the model king for Israel, all of David's descendants, the last of whom will be the Messiah, are also portrayed as shepherds. Matthew doesn't make it explicit that Jesus is a shepherd for the people, but the gospel writer John certainly knows the same tradition when John reports that Jesus said, "I am the good shepherd." And if these are sheep without a shepherd, and Jesus wants to provide them with a shepherd or shepherds, just where will these shepherds lead the people? Well, the answer comes quickly right here. This is all moving toward the harvest. And in chapter 13, verses 30 and 39 of Matthew, Matthew makes it clear that the harvest is the end of the age. It is the great reckoning of history. When God brings history to a close, and when people's place within history and within God's view of them is established. This also comes back again in the great judgment scene in Matthew chapter 25 with the sheep and the goats. But Matthew is quite clear throughout the gospel that this end of the age for him and for his community is clear and it is imminent. It is coming any day now. And the urgency is that everyone should be prepared to shine like the sun, as it says in chapter 13. Here, Jesus makes it clear that the harvest is plentiful, that there are many who will be gathered into the kingdom at that time. And because the harvest is plentiful, it takes many who will carry the word of promise, who will alert people to the urgency of this coming end, and who will help to ensure that they will shine like the sun, to gather as many as possible into the kingdom when that harvest comes. And so in the next chapter, chapter 10, Jesus will send out the 12 disciples with power. They're not just to pray that the Lord of the harvest will send out workers into the harvest. They themselves become those workers in the harvest as well. And Matthew, as a worker in the harvest himself, urges his community, urges all disciples, urges indeed us to become workers in the harvest, carrying the word of promise, scattering it, gathering as many as possible into the kingdom, giving it our all, because God has given us all. God bless.